You're listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Here are your hosts, Fran Chismar and Tom Kinesic.
Welcome back to The Buzz, brought to you by the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. I am Fran Chismar.
And I'm Tom Kinesic, and today we're buzzing into episode 153, and like usual, as the last probably 20-plus Buzz episodes have gone, before we get into all the really fun, cool, awesome native plant conversations that we like to have, we like to follow up on some things that have been going on in the Native Plants Healthy Planet world.
Yes.
And the first one, Fran, you have listed here as follow-up.
Well, I was hoping
the
there would
Native
be
Plant Anthem. I don't know if there's anything to follow up on yet.
No, I think everyone saw the post. They heard us talk about it last one. They saw the post in the Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook group, but no submissions as of yet as far as the Native Plant Anthem.
I would assume that creative genius takes time. You need to be patient.
I agree.
Although it has been 2 weeks and
nothing.
Yeah.
What did we say we would give as a gift? $100 worth of swag?
$100 worth of Native Plants Healthy Planet paraphernalia.
Okay.
I guess is one way to put it.
So even though there's no follow-up per se, it gives us the opportunity to just remind everyone that contest exists.
Yeah, so you can find that on our Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook page. Yeah. It could be a cappella. That would be fantastic.
Ooh, that would be
But there's a little write-up presenting what this is and a little AI-generated image of native plants and an instrument, and is what I typed in. And I don't know. I didn't have a lot of great choices. It was one of the free AI ones that makes images, so it wasn't like I didn't pay for any of this.
I will say this. Whoever submits any submissions will get played. So if you're...
Do you want to go that far?
Yeah. It's going to get played. We know what the lyrics are. We're going to play it.
As long as it's true to lyrics with... We'll entertain a little bit of creative freedom.
Yes.
But remember, this is a kid's show.
Yeah. So we will play... We will play them on air. So just don't submit it and say don't play it, because the winner, it's going to get used as maybe outro music. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Maybe it's going to get used somehow and get incorporated into the podcast. So I just wanted to throw that little disclaimer in there. So what else do you have to follow up on?
Yeah, so I put in here some... It's good news, bad news. It's somewhere in between. Overall, it's good news, but it's bad news that we have to talk about it again.
Okay.
And that is the Restore America's Wildlife Act has been reintroduced. You probably remember me talking about this last year.
Yes.
And we got close to the finish line, but never got across the finish line and got passed and funded. But it's a great bill just for not just wildlife, but native plant communities all over the country. And it has really bipartisan support. It's really well supported, and it's well supported through all different kinds of activist groups as well. Like, I just got an email the other day. Most of the buzz I've actually heard about it is from like hunting and fishing organizations.
Okay.
But I got an email from backcountry hunters and anglers the other day saying, hey, it got close to the finish line, but it didn't get across. Kind of what I just said. I think I maybe plagiarized that language in retrospect.
You paraphrased.
Paraphrase their language. But it's going to dedicate $1.4 billion annually to help state and tribal fish and wildlife agencies proactively manage at-risk species and prevent them from being added to the federal list of threatened and endangered species. And it's led by Senators Martin Heinrich, who's a Democrat from New Mexico, and then Tom Tillis, who is a Republican from North Carolina, and also has a bunch of other co-sponsors, I believe. And it was the congressional bill is led by Representative Debbie Dingell, who is a Democrat from Minnesota, and also has bipartisan support. So something that you should reach out to your elected officials from your state, no matter whether you're from New Jersey, California, Hawaii, Minnesota, wherever. This is going to have good impacts across the entire country. And with the Backcountry Hunters and Anglers email I got, it actually had a spot where you could take action. It just had a little link that said take action. Okay. Click that. It has you put in your home address and zip code, and then it actually has a draft letter and you put in your first name, last name, email, and then your phone number, and it will actually craft the message for you, or has a pre-crafted message, and it will, by hitting send, after you do all that, will send it to your representatives, which for me are Senator Bob Menendez, Senator Cory Booker, and then Representative Andy Kim from New Jersey.
Is that something we can share on the show
That's something
notes?
I'll put on. Now,
Okay.
why it's probably not applicable to every one of our listeners, because you might not agree with the sentiments from the letter, but their letter basically says, as your constituent and a supporter of backcountry hunters and anglers, the voice for our wild and public lands, waters and wildlife, I want to express my support for the Recovering America's Wildlife Act, which is S1149, 1149, and then it just kind of goes on. For more than a century, hunters and anglers have been a vital source for funding for wildlife and conservation. This legislation would yada, yada, yada. Yeah. So, but it's already pre-written for you. And I'm sure I know there's other outlets for this too. How.org is another one specifically for like sportsmen that typically does this and has like a pre-crafted thing, already has the addresses for your representatives loaded in when you do that. I'm assuming if you go through like organizations like Pinelands Preservation Alliance, I know does similar stuff. I don't know if they've done it for this. Audubon societies, I would think native plant societies may do some of this stuff. So go, if you don't have that through the organization of your choice to try and do it, reach out yourself. You go to, congress.gov or something like that, and it gives you same thing. You put in your address, tells you who your representatives are, really easy to click contact. And an email is great. Sometimes a phone call is even better. And they don't always, you're not usually going to talk to your representative, but you'll talk to someone on their staff. And sometimes they're just taking a tally saying, hey, you know what? You're the fourth person who's called about this today. I've been marking it down, and I'm going to pass that along to the representative and say, we had 15 people call about this one thing today, and say they want you to support it. They're from your district. They think it's important. So I always advocate for getting involved in politics, even though you'll hear my opinion on politicians in the next episode. It's how our country is run, and voting is one way to make your voice heard, but you can get a little bit louder if you are constantly in your elected representative's ear along the way. So.
I agree. It works. Or sometimes, I should say.
And there's another, that's just one of many, many bills at the federal level. There's even more at the state level. New Jersey has, like we've talked about before, the invasive species bill, which is sponsored by Senator Bob Smith. And I can't remember the co-sponsor's name at the moment, but it's something I've helped work on and got to sit in meetings about that stuff. I know other listeners have done that as well. So there's all kinds of native plant stuff going on across the country at the state level as well, even at county level sometimes. Pay attention, and then when those things come up, hey, take 5 minutes or less. Make a phone call, write an email. It may feel insignificant, and well, is there someone really going to listen to little old me? But they get enough of those. And not even like dozens or hundreds. Sometimes it's just 3 or 4. It puts it on their radar. And now they're like, hey, I should pay more attention to this. It wasn't something I was co-sponsored. Oh, this is something I'm getting some feedback on. It looks pretty good to me. Or sometimes it's you want it to go the other way. And like, oh, yeah, this is bad. This is not something that we want to entertain. So if you don't raise your voice about those things that you're passionate about, you can't expect for them to have an opinion either way on it or get upset with their opinion. So, all right, cool.
You got anything else?
Not that
I got no other follow-up. Yeah,
so,
me neither.
But but we do have some really cool plants that we think are looking good this week. So let's kick into That's Hot.
That's hot.
I think we're both like on the same page with
we
selections
are.
a little bit.
We are.
Why don't you go?
So mine is a little backstory. Yeah, I always have like a little backstory of why I'm picking this plant. We did a controlled burn at our farm, which you can see on our a little bit of on our Native Plants Healthy Planet Instagram page. And as I have my brother and a couple other guys here who worked here, did most of it. I showed up for a little bit and basically was like, oh, look, this is cool, made a video, but I wasn't really involved with it, so I'm like not dressed appropriately for it. I had some other stuff going on that day that I had to look nice for. So, but in that burn, we're starting to see stuff come back and what's coming in. There was a lot of invasive species, like a lot of honeysuckles in there, the non-native honeysuckles. A lot of like Himalayan blackberry, and a ton of now I'm blanking on multiflora rose. There's Japanese barberry. There's all kinds of stuff. So we did about a third of the total piece of woods, just to kind of see how it went. And it was got a little squirrely at times, but it was overall fun. But now we're starting to see what is coming back, and I've walked through. I found wild geranium, which there was some before, but now I'm finding a lot. And then what I was really amazed by is I just came across like a I don't want to call it a thicket because it's not really a thicket, but it was a thicket of trout lilies. And
that's pretty awesome.
So, how do you pronounce this, Fran? It's erythronium?
I would say erythronium.
Americanum, which is one of the trout lilies. So trout lily from Jersey Friendly Yards. Trout lily has 2 tulip-like leaves at the base of the plant and lily-shaped yellow flowers, which bloom in early spring. The flowers bloom during the spring trout fishing seasons, hence the common name, which it is trout fishing season here in New Jersey. The plants will go into dormancy by late spring. Trout lily prefers moist, acidic, organic soils, used in shady garden areas, woodland gardens, rock gardens, and along ponds or other water features. This is a fairly moist soil area. I imagine it's probably considered a wetland, but it's not. Like, it's when you walk across it, it's not like, oh, I'm getting wet. But you dig down just a little bit, and the soil is very moist. But yeah, it's a carpet of
really
trout lily
I would
in
love
this
to
one
see
spot.
that. All
and
right.
they were always there, but I never noticed them being this thick as they are in this one cool place. And one of the other things I'll throw out there about trout lily is the leaves. Well, a lot of the parts are edible, but I know the leaves in particular are edible, and they kind of taste a little like spinach. When you eat them. So maybe I don't know if there's any warnings on don't eat more than like 6 leaves or anything like that. But do your own research. But you can eat a couple different components of it. I read something else on it is edible and it tastes like cucumber. Is what I read, but I don't remember what snippet it was. So,
well, you'll have to share with me the location because I would like to.
Maybe we'll go out after this and check it out.
Cool. So I have, it's funny because I actually use Jersey Friendly Yards as well for my description, but my plant this week is Virginia bluebells or Virginia cowslip, which is Mertensia virginica, and we were just talking about this plant with former guest Daryl from and Carrie from Sunset Farmstead. So. And it made me think of last spring when I visited Bowman's Hill and saw it with the celandine. It was pretty amazing. So Virginia bluebells provide early spring delight as clusters of pink buds emerge, blooming as blue-purple, trumpet-shaped flowers March through April. By midsummer, the foliage dies back as the plant goes dormant. Use it in shade garden, woodland borders, or as a spring ground cover. Overplant with ferns or perennials that will fill in the empty space once the plants recede. Related species is Mertensia marittima, which is sea lungwort, which tolerates salt and can be used in coastal landscapes. I mentioned if you want to see them en masse and you're local to this New Jersey, PA area, go to Bowman's Hill Wildflower Preserve. Now is the time. The blue to purple blooms in March and April. Lake's loam, sandy organic soil is slightly acidic to slightly alkaline, attracts bees, butterflies, hummingbirds, and other pollinators. Likes it moist with a low drought tolerance and grows 1 to 2 foot tall by 1 to 2 foot wide. So it's a. I don't think it's really native to this area. Have you ever seen it in the wild here?
I haven't.
I think it's more. I know it's not far. It's native, not far from here. Obviously, Bowman's Hill is about a 40-minute drive from us, but I don't think I've ever seen it in the wild.
I'm looking at
other than that, yeah.
What is it? Bonap right now.
Okay.
It's my favorite resource for looking this kind of stuff up.
Mine as well.
And it appears to be rare in Burlington County, but you get right across the river in Pennsylvania, and it seems like it's fairly common all along the Delaware River, including further west to let's see here, Missouri, Minnesota, Iowa, eastern Iowa. It looks like that the hottest region for this plant is southern Minnesota, eastern Iowa, southern Wisconsin, all of Illinois, eastern Missouri, and then a little bit into Indiana, while it is native across Ohio as well. So, yeah,
very cool.
And Virginia, of course.
Here's how busy we've been. Did I play the That's Hot music?
I don't remember. I know I gave you the lead in, and I think you played something.
I think I played it. I don't know if I did. That's how busy. Happy spring.
What are we gonna do? It's a low budget production.
There you go. All right. So 2 great choices. Now is the time that you would enjoy both of those plants. If you're in the right area and you have access to these plants, it may be something you want to add to your home garden if you have a perfect spot for it. So make sure you check those out. And what do you think? You want to do a little this or that?
Suppose we have to.
All right. You can get with this, or you can get with that. All right. So we do have a winner. Last week, I had an article about animal crossings in the Pacific Northwest. Tom had an article on climate change and plant interactions, and we have a winner. Me, 15-13. It was a tie up.
Oh, yeah. I was up 1 last I checked.
You were up, and then it was a tie at the end of the day.
I'm so used
yesterday.
to winning that I assumed I did again.
Shocked?
Yeah.
You know, I'm so used to losing. Like, it was tied yesterday, and then this morning I went up, and I double-checked before we came in because I'm like, I'm sure Tom's in the lead by now. But no, I managed to squeak that one out. So it's so interesting how we're both on the same page this one. Both of our articles are relatively short. And we're reading the entire articles. I'm going to choose to go first this week.
Yeah, it's Fran is rewarding everyone for voting for him with an incredibly short article after that book last time.
Yeah, and I actually won with the book last week. So yeah, I'm
trying to figure out while you're doing that. I'm trying to figure out by word count whose article is shorter because they are both very short.
They're both short. And this, to me, is a follow-up. I had previously done an article how they were saying that in Hawaii, invasives outnumber natives and how it was taking toll on native birds and wildlife. So this is a release from the governor, Josh Green of Hawaii, and it was on his webpage, Newsroom. And it is titled, from Honolulu, Governor Josh Green, MD, has proclaimed April as Native Hawaiian Plant Month, recognizing the diversity and biocultural value of roughly 1,400 native plant species. Native Hawaiian Plant Month also provides an opportunity to celebrate the successes made by rare plant botanists who manage more than 420 endangered plant species statewide. The Plant Extinction Prevention Program, PEPP, in collaboration of the DLNR Division of Forestry and Wildlife, University of Hawaii, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service recently released an annual report detailing a series of rediscoveries and rebounds in rare plant populations across the archipelago. Several plant species previously thought extinct were rediscovered through field surveys last year. Rappelling botanists found a small shrub, Silene lanceolata, in Waimea Canyon on Kauai. On Maui, a sedge known as Cyperus prescotianus, I actually bit my tongue trying to say that, had not been seen for more than 100 years but was rediscovered along a stream bank. Other species that have been present in low numbers saw their populations rebound over the past year, with staff either transplanting seedlings or finding new individuals that germinated on their own. Rebounding species included 3 extremely rare Cyanea species found respectively on Kauai, Molokai, and Hawaii Island, the coastal shrub Napaka papa on Molokai, and Uiai, I don't even know how to say that one, on Lanai. These plants are part of what makes Hawaii a special place, said Matt Keir, Rare Plant Program Coordinator for DLNR. For Hawaii to thrive, its native plant species have to thrive. We're thrilled that our team saw successes over the past year and that we as a community can celebrate these species for Native Hawaiian Plant Month. The PEPP report also highlighted growing threats to native plants across Hawaii, including wildlife and the expanding population of coconut rhinoceros beetle on Oahu. Work is now underway to collect seeds from 5 native species of Laulu in order to safeguard the species from potential impacts by the invasive beetle. Plant enthusiasts can celebrate Native Hawaiian Plant Month by attending Earth Day events, including visiting a PEPP booth at the upcoming Bishop Museum Science and Sustainability Festival on April 22nd. So it was just nice to hear a lot of the times our articles are always highlighting issues or problems or ongoing, how invasives are taking over. We're constantly talking about invasives, and we've talked about them on Hawaii. It was just nice to get a positive article about rebounding plant species. And part of that is just bringing awareness to it and making changes, and it's just nice to see that is happening. Not all is always lost. There's always a chance for a rebound. So,
that's awesome. And I was just looking up how many states have a native plant month. I think New Jersey does.
I don't know.
Clearly, Hawaii does.
Yeah.
I wish there was a definitive list of who did. I know nationally, April this month is Native Plant Month, but I don't know if that's actually official. Yeah. April 2021 was the first National Native Plant Month, and 2023 should be approved soon. And this was from...
we celebrate native plants every month.
It's one of those things. Like Earth Day is every day here at Pinelands Nursery, and I always forget what day it is until we get a ton of calls from the garden clubs. On Monday, March 25th, Senators Hirono and Braun introduced a Senate resolution to designate April 2023 as National Native Plant Month. Now that has been introduced, we're waiting for final approval from the Senate.
All right.
And the logo is a bur oak, which is, what's the botanical name on that one, Fran? Little pop quiz.
Quercus macrocarpa.
Yeah, you're right.
All right.
You're right. So,
woohoo! I knew something.
I'm assuming that this has since been passed, but yeah, I don't know.
I hope so.
That shows you how close I'm following the federal legislation.
What short article do you have this
My
week?
short article is even shorter than Fran's, and this is every word from it. There were a lot of pictures in this article.
All right.
As evidenced by the title of it, which said, Photos. See the wildflower super bloom happening across California. Something I heard that they were anticipating was going to happen, but now that we're in that time where you start to have some things blooming in California, it's seeing it.
Unseasonably wet, correct?
That's exactly right. Did you read the article?
No, I didn't look at it yet. I was going to say, I think what made me think of it is my wife is in Los Angeles right now for the week.
Yeah.
And she's going to...
She should go. I can send her a list from this article of the places to view these flowers.
But she's going there for 63-degree weather and overcast, and we're in the 80s here in New Jersey right now. So it's sunny. So
anyway, this one was published on NPR, although you can find similar articles all over the place. And I'll read my little bit, like literally little bit.
All right.
I'm assuming it's less than like 200 words. And then we'll discuss it a little bit after that. So wildflowers aren't just in bloom across California. The Golden State is experiencing a rare super bloom that's blanketing the ground with a variety of richly colored plants. The lush growth comes after a particularly wet past few months in California, where a string of atmospheric rivers and snowstorms have dumped loads of precipitation on the state. Super blooms occur in a wet year that's come after several drier years because wildflower seeds are waiting around the ground for the right conditions to bloom. UC Davis plant science professor Jennifer Funk said in a news release, a very wet year like the year we are having now could trigger germination of all these seeds at once, leading to a super bloom, Funk added. The California Department of Parks and Recreation expects this year's wildflower blooms to range from good to better than average, which does not sound like a super bloom to me.
Well, they've been so dry for so many years. I wonder if that has to affect.
So typically the picturesque vistas draw droves of tourists from nearby and far away, but some places are unaccustomed to swarms of selfie-seeking sightseers. Ooh, how's that for alliteration? Such as the city of Lake Elsinore, which has struggled to accommodate the hundreds of thousands of tourists angling to view its bright orange poppy fields. The State Parks Agency recommends a number of sites in Southern California and the Bay Area where nature lovers can go to glimpse the poppies, sand verbena, sunflowers, lilies, and more. Officials say those who venture into super bloom territory should check the forecast before they go, know their body's limits, and respect the natural landscapes. California also saw super blooms in 2017 and 2019. So, and the pictures of all this are really stunning. When I was looking, I'm like, this can't be in the wild. This has to be cultivated in some way because it literally looks like just fields of poppies in some of the pictures, bright orange.
Wow.
So it's really stunning, some of the pictures that are out there. So I do recommend looking at the pictures. The one thing that I wanted to really point out, and I hate to be a negative Nancy about this kind of stuff, is when you're going to see this stuff. And whether it's seeing Virginia bluebells at Bowman's Hill or any kind of wildflower or native plant viewing, you have to know nature's boundaries in a sense.
Yeah.
This is a really opportunity to connect with nature on one sense, but at the same time, you have people that continue to push the limit, and all of a sudden they're trampling over where poppies are growing, and because they want to get that picture in the middle of the poppy field, and now they're walking over there, and yeah, a couple people doing that, probably not a big deal. When you have hundreds or thousands of people doing that, all of a sudden you don't have those flowers growing in there anymore because of soil compaction and breaking and all this kind of stuff. So it's just really important to keep that in mind when you're doing this stuff. I definitely encourage you to go and interact with nature any way you can. Yeah. You just got to be cognizant that every step you take has an effect, a butterfly effect, so to speak, across the landscape. So that's why trails are really important. When there's a trail, stay on the trail. Like, don't venture off the trail. There's a reason they're there for. Yeah. It's to congregate everyone's steps, and we're sacrificing that little bit of habitat so that the rest of it can thrive.
And I've noticed through social media, a lot of organizations right now are really trying to protect environmentally sensitive areas, and they're putting up signs. So please respect those signs. I've seen people ignoring those all the time. We have them in a few of our local parks that we visit, but just make sure it's there for a reason, whether it be wildlife or rare plant species or something that's just in a sensitive state at that time. Just heed. Yeah.
And the only reason I say that, it says in the article too, to respect the natural landscapes, is some of the pictures you have people who are clearly off trail, and then you have others where people are really paying attention to the trails and staying in the right places and viewing from where they're supposed to view. It's there's the great preservationist, conservationist debate on how we should manage these landscapes. And then you have the crazy restorationists like Fran and I who are like, oh, we should make more of this. And we're kind of the wackos of that world. But you have the preservationists who are like, hey, these things need to be preserved and kept as wild as possible, and we shouldn't have no human interaction there. What, in my mind, tends to happen in those things is you lose people who no longer see the value of why we're preserving those spaces. Once you have generations go by, they're like, the people who preserve those spaces are no longer there to preach their importance, and you have people questioning, well, why aren't we utilizing these for natural resources of some sort, whether it's logging or oil or those kind of things. And then you have the conservationist standpoint, like, hey, let's utilize these but protect them. So, hey, let's go see these poppy fields or let's go see Yellowstone, but make sure we're respecting its boundaries. And then you have people who are just constantly pushing the boundaries. So you may be preserving 100 acres, but each person is just going another 6 inches than the last. And all of a sudden, that roadway or the trail that used to be just a footpath is now a highway. and you're just constantly losing that little bit more because everyone has to go that extra step further than the last person there. I bring up a story I've brought up before on a trip my wife and I took to Iceland. Well, we ignored the signs too. There's all these signs saying, hey, if you aren't going on a glacier hiking tour, you need to stop here. Yeah. And then we're like a mile from the glacier. And there's thousands of people ahead of us. So we just kept going. Yeah. And then get to another sign, same thing, same sign. Just keep going. There's still people. And now you're at the edge of the glacier, and there's signs saying, if you aren't a glacier hiking tour, you need to stop here for ecological reasons, basically. And that's where we stopped. Yeah. But there was plenty of people who didn't. And even though they didn't have the crampons and the right headgear and all that, they were still climbing up on the glacier, and their footprints were melting the ice just that little bit extra than if it was just sitting out in the air. And but they just needed to go that, like, each person had to go a little bit further than the last one. And you could see it there with the couple hundred people or so that are around this glacier. You had, like, just someone had to go one step further than the person who was already at that furthest point. And they just kept getting higher and higher and higher. And it's natural.
Listen, I'm guilty. And you've been to Saratoga Spa Park
yeah.
to see
This
the guys.
is the same thing.
You know, and
talked about last time,
the
too.
first year we went, you know, people were taking pictures from the trail across from it, and we went the back way. There were no signs. Like, we just assumed it was. We were up on the geyser, like taking photos, things like that. And then the second time we visited, there were all those areas were roped off, saying you know don't proceed beyond this point. And we're probably part of the reason for that. You know, we pushed it too far, and there was no reason for us to get that close. Like, you can observe its beauty without doing that.
Yeah, So get outside and enjoy all of nature's beauty, however you choose to interact with it. Just know that there are limits there, and that as far as you go, the next person's going to take it that one step farther because they want to feel. There is something about nature. Like, I went on this wonderful hike, and I knew it was a commonly used hiking trail, but we were the only people that we saw on it. And then you get to the end and you see there was a campfire there from like 2 nights before. And well, we're not the first people to be there, even though it feels completely uninterrupted. And like, well, in a sense, it's like, oh, this has already been spoiled in some way because someone else has seen it before I did. That's just a human reaction, I think, to some of this stuff. When you're driving down the highway, there's so many people who just need to go a little bit. There's that car in front of you. I just need to go a little bit faster than they are. I feel that all the time, and it's like, well, I'm not doing the right thing unless I'm passing people, or getting in front of that one person when we're doing our zipper to merge, and so it's just you got to be cognizant of that. Everyone forgets, everyone slips up, but.
Oh, well.
None of us are perfect.
No. But 2 fantastic articles. We will post this on Monday on the Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook group, and make sure you vote because.
And of course, the choice is yours.
And make sure you look at pictures too.
Yes.
Then,
definitely.
Then Fran doesn't stand a chance. Although pictures of Hawaii are nice too. You keep bringing up all these
no
Hawaii
pictures.
articles like you're trying to pander to somebody that maybe they'll send you tickets to go. But
Oh, is that an option?
Yeah.
I hadn't even thought about that. Maybe, yeah.
they're at the
We can do a live recording from
at the
Hawaii.
National Native Seed Conference. I met somebody who worked in Hawaii,
Okay.
and they were saying, "Oh yeah, you should definitely come down and check it out." So
We'd be happy. We can let you know where to send the free plane tickets and hotel reservations, and we'd be happy to.
yeah.
We'd be happy to go. We do have.
I was gonna say, Fran, how many minutes in are we? I feel like we're going really fast.
We're a half an hour in.
Okay.
We're a half an
That's
hour
what I
in.
figured.
So I figure we're going to be about an hour.
Yeah,
today.
perfect.
So we have listener shout outs.
Listener, shout out.
What do you have? I see we got a couple more 5-star reviews.
Yeah, we did. We had one from Garden Evolution who loved the podcast, especially because we don't judge for the use of cultivars, which they must have not listened to some of the early episodes. But no, we've come a long way when it comes to our mentality on cultivars, where I think from a home garden perspective, I see a use for them for sure. I ordered some the other day.
I agree that it's a gateway drug, and if that's the compromise, if it's not an invasive or it's not a non-native, I'll take it.
Yeah, I even go beyond that and say, if it's for a home garden, you want there to be garden success.
Yes.
And now you have something that I don't want to say is assured of garden success, but it's been thoroughly tested for its consistency is the word I'll use. Where it's a known product. When you put it in your garden, you kind of have a realistic that's a really tongue twist for me. A realistic expectation on what to expect when it comes up, and it's going to be approximately the height you're expecting and the color you're expecting, and it's a known quantity.
Yeah.
And when you're getting something from a species, or when you get a species plant, they're selected for they're not selected in a way that promotes genetic diversity. So there's going to be some differences in height, and there's going to be some differences in color. And if you're only having 1 or 3, maybe you don't have the room to play or not meet your expectations as much, especially if you're a new gardener, which the gateway drug comes in.
And I realize that some of those choices are being made for you because you may go to a garden center and your only option is a cultivar or a species and not a straight species. So I appreciate the thought that goes behind of sometimes choosing those selections or cultivars to add them to your garden. We really have. I think we've done a full 180 with our our opinion on cultivars. So, and what else do you have?
And then we had MW3C, who's from Memphis, Tennessee. That's where Graceland is, right? Yes. I wonder if they're an Elvis fan.
Oh, I would like to. Are you an Elvis fan?
I wasn't a fan of those wiggling hips. I don't even know how to make that sound like more like a 40s dad.
I have a great appreciation for Elvis.
Yeah.
I had a friend growing up whose father was a huge Elvis fan, who we used to tease all the time. But no, I do like.
It's one of those. He's one of those artists where I think the breadth of his catalog is where I'm most impressed. There isn't like a single song where I feel the same way about the Beatles, and I know there's a lot of people who are like huge Beatles, like I don't even know what to call them, like above and beyond Beatles lovers. There isn't like a Beatles song that I'm like, man, this is like one of my favorite songs. Same thing with Elvis, but the breadth of their catalog, I'm like, man, they span so many, the Beatles in particular, span so many genres. Elvis less so, but still, there's so many different sounds that he had.
Elvis reinvented himself in the 70s, late 60s, early 70s during the comeback. But you look at that, and it's 2 decades worth of music. What impresses me about the Beatles, it's 8 years.
Oh, yeah.
8 years to put out groundbreaking music and just keep pushing it to a whole nother level. I don't, that's when you look at the music in the short amount of time and what they've accomplished. I don't know.
Oh yeah. It's anyway.
Yeah, I was gonna say
MW3C is from Memphis, Tennessee, which is the home of Elvis and Graceland, and but they liked how a lot of what we talked about was applicable even and helped them garden at home, even though it's not necessarily the same plant palette. So.
Wonderful.
Which is, what we were hoping for. As we learned when we first started, man, there's a lot. People from all over were listening to this. It wasn't just folks from our neck of the woods, so we want to make sure we added to that.
Exactly. I have this week a former guest of ours.
And I'm glad you're bringing this person up.
Yeah.
Because I had something to say about them, too.
All right, fantastic. So, Rosalind Doremus, who we lovingly call Roz, who was on our first Meet Our Listeners episode. And she's been a good friend for a long time and was formerly in the business, just opened up or is opening up her own garden center with a focus on natives. It's not all natives, but she is pushing the limits of what had been carried there before. She's doing native trees, straight species trees. And I wanted to just give her a plug and say thank you. The name of her garden center is called My Backyard at Nectar's, and it's located in Titusville, New Jersey, which I believe is in that Washington Crossing area of New Jersey. Am I correct? Do you know?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you're in that part of New Jersey, and even if you're not, give it a shot. She's I know who she has been or what she's been adding to the garden center, and it's going to be a nice list. So we don't have too many of these that specialize in native plants. Like it's not strictly native plants, but just to have someone that's understanding and focusing on that, hopefully her business thrives and grows.
And I know she has some customers there right now.
Really?
Because my wife and her aunt and my son are actually there as we speak.
Did you know I was going to give her a listener shout out?
I did, yeah.
Okay. All right.
I'm literally, my wife just texted me saying, hey, do we need anything from My Backyard at Nectar's?
Oh,
and I was
awesome.
like, anything we can't get from the nursery? And I said, I don't know. I don't know what's there. But yeah, they actually visited Bowman's Hill and walked around there. And then what was funny is my wife over dinner on Monday night was saying that her aunt had visited this new garden center and took some pictures of the American Beauties pots. Okay. And asked, I guess she was asking my wife if we knew anything about them. We're like, oh yeah, I know. And then I was like, in fact, I probably know the person who sold them to her. Sold them to the garden center. And then she was like, yeah, it's this new place called like My Backyard at Nectar's. And I was like, oh, you know the owner.
Yeah.
and then we started to talk a little bit, but they went to Bowman's Hill. Her aunt lives in that area. So,
Okay, awesome.
So I guess they stopped there before heading home.
That's wonderful. So we wish Roz all the best, and if you're a listener and you're in that area, check it out because I think you'll be happy. And she's making an effort. If there's something you want that you don't see, ask, and if she has access to it, she'll try to get it for you. So we have no questions this week. We have no Tom's Petty. No, that's what I'm wanting to complain. But we do have a Grow Read a Book that we saved from last time.
We do, yeah.
Grow Read a Book. I like books.
All right, what do you got?
So this is more out of pure fascination, this book.
I can't wait to hear about this.
It had nothing to do with plants at all. But it had to do with something that interacts with plants a lot, and that is animals.
Okay.
And mainly the real topic that tied in was the first topic I'm going to talk about. But anyway, the book was titled Some We Love, Some We Hate, and Some We Eat. It was by Hal Herzog, who's an anthrozoologist, which studies the relationships between animals and humans.
Okay.
And it was just a really fascinating book because it dove into mindsets behind our interactions with animals as humans, our interactions with animals. And there was just like a lot of tidbits. I brought this up in our next episode, which we already recorded. We're in the time lapse again, or the warp zone, whatever you want to call it. But like the history of dog ownership and how dogs were always like a utilitarian thing. I think that means that they were like had to be useful. Is how I use the word. But basically, dogs were used for hunting. They were used for security. They had a purpose, and they were not house dogs per se or pets. And that is like a really more modern concept that started in like the 1950s. So not even 100 years ago, you really didn't have dogs that lived inside as nothing but pets.
No, and I told
Same
you,
thing with
like,
cats.
because I'm older than you. As in the 70s, as a kid growing up, I can only remember one family that had an indoor dog, and it was like a toy poodle. And other than that, everyone had outdoor dogs that were chained to something.
Yeah.
Like, and that's something you don't see today. But they would be chained to I remember my neighbor had a pit bull that was chained to a doghouse that probably had like a 6-foot chain, and it was never in the house. No one even petted it. It was a nasty dog,
Oh, yeah.
But there were other dogs like that on the street that were just outdoor dogs that just,
Yeah, and I said the first thing I was going to talk about, and then I started talking about something else. But so that was like a newer concept. Just a lot of fascinating stuff in the book like that. Same thing with cats. Cats were there basically to catch mice. And but tying into cats, the book starts with the author getting a phone call from a colleague who was just started yelling at them over the phone because they had heard they were feeding kittens to his boa constrictor, and which is like a pretty shocking thing.
Yeah,
when you
that
think,
is pretty
feed
shocking.
kittens to a boa constrictor, but then which he wasn't doing, and corrected the colleague and said, "Oh, I'm not doing that." But then you start diving into that thing that when I first heard it, and then when I told folks in the office, they're clearly distraught by that concept. When you really break it down, you have a pet boa constrictor, you have these kittens which are being put down by the thousands in shelters because there isn't enough room for them. Cats are one of the most, or probably the most invasive species in the world in many capacities, and kill so many birds. And so it's like, well, we're getting rid of these kittens anyway. Why not use them for a pet boa constrictor? Is it better to just put them down and throw them out than have them be useful in some sense? Because to not kill them isn't an option because they're destroying so much wildlife. And that's when I knew the book was going to be right up my alley and make me think a lot about a lot of things. But yeah, like that whole concept with dogs being pets. And one of the lines that he quotes, and I can't remember who he quoted, was talking about like clothing for dogs and like basically how dogs are expensive for dogs are out of control and how dogs are on antidepressants and anti-anxiety medicine and they're going to spas and they're getting all these crazy treatments and it's like and they have to eat the gourmet food. They can't just eat the regular food, which is even then we have special food for dogs and they used to just eat table scraps. Like why have we gotten down this route? And it's like someone is making a lot of money here with the advertising that you need to do this stuff, and it's costing people like the rate that people spend on their pets is insane. Yeah. But the quote that I've alluded to was, if you buy a $20 jacket for your dog to keep it warm in the winter, that's for the dog. If you buy a $200 jacket for the dog to keep it warm in the winter, that's for you. Yeah. That's because you want it to look cool. And it just reminded me of so many people I know that just like go gaga over their dogs. And I used to, growing up, we always had dogs and cats and all that stuff. But now, having not had one for a while, it allows me to take a step back and say, man, this is like a very interesting relationship that we have with our pets. I would love to have a dog. My wife's allergic. That's why we don't.
We have 2 dogs, both of which have coats. Now, they're Chihuahuas.
Yeah.
So, you can see, like, it's.
But are they Gucci? Are they Gucci?
They're not. No? Like, they don't want to go outside in the winter, so that coat helps.
Have you ever spent $100+ a night for them to stay at a hotel?
No.
Apparently people do.
My one dog is on arthritis medicine.
Yeah.
So, like, it's.
Which, that makes a little more sense.
Yeah.
And like I think when it's your pet and it's part of your family, it does like it's a much bigger decision.
Yeah.
But there actually he was saying there's some folks that will credit the rise in age at which people have their first children is higher, and there's some people who credit that to dog ownership and how dogs are often treated like people's children when they're dating or engaged and even newly married. That's their children, and maybe they're putting off having kids. And then what often happens is they have kids and the dog kind of takes a back seat at that point.
My first dog,
which isn't necessarily right for the dog.
No, my first dog was very resentful when we had kids because he was our baby. And then we had a real baby, and it was, he didn't take a back seat, but he didn't like not being the center of attention.
Yeah.
I had a friend, same thing, that had an Australian sheepdog that had to find a new owner because that dog became really resentful when they had a child.
Yeah. But in another concept, he was just breaking down some of the interactions people have with animals. Like, and again, going back to dogs, when dogs like nuzzle up on your legs, and it's so nice. Oh, the dog he likes me or she likes me, and like we're more than owner and pet. We're a family. Yeah. Like, oh, that's the dog marking its territory. They're rubbing all his scent glands on you, so other dogs are like, oh no, that belongs to me.
Yeah.
And so there's just a lot of little interactions. There's another one. He's going with dogs where like dogs when they act all guilty when you like yell at them for something, and they did an experiment with biscuits and they had a treat, and sometimes the researcher basically the owner would tell the dog, don't eat the treat. Sometimes the researcher would feed the dog the treat. Sometimes they would take it away. And then they would have the owner sometimes come in and say, hey, the dog ate the treat after you told it and disobeyed you. And the owner would yell at the dog and the dog would cower. But the dog would cower and act guilty whether they ate the treat or not. It wasn't that they ate the treat, that they were acting that way because the owner was yelling at them. So it was just explaining some of those interactions, which was just fascinating for my strange brain. Also, going back to snakes, it talks about like fear of snakes, and there's some. He's trying to go over: is it nature or nurture that makes us afraid of snakes? Because you have some areas of the world where people are petrified of snakes, like even more so than I'm thinking people in the U.S. are, where it's you hear the snake within 10 miles, and the whole tribe runs out there with shovels and axes and chops it up into little bits, like. Because they don't want a snake anywhere near them. And then others who are just like walking up to snakes and they don't really care that they're there. They're like, that's a poisonous one. I'm going to steer clear. This one's fine. So I don't care if it's here. It's probably a good thing because it's helping eat mice or do other stuff. There's a lot of like non-conclusions in this book too. Yeah. So if you're looking for answers, this isn't the book for you.
It's just pondering it more.
Yeah. There's the whole concept. He has a whole long period where he's talking about chickens and cockfighting. And cockfighting is looked down on, and it happens in the United States, especially in the Southeast, is what he's covering in this book. And when you get into Appalachia, it's like a big culture that's kind of just overlooked because it's not really causing any harm. But in other countries, it's a little bit more brutal. But he's like, so yeah, people will be really against cockfighting while eating like their chicken breast for dinner, and the chickens in the cockfighting that are in cockfighting are treated like king animals until they die. Where the ones on your table are all cramped up and cooped up and put in trucks with feathers blowing all over the place, and it's like just so it's on your table.
All right.
But it's just a lot of like these moral conundrums that we come across, and he talks about the whole concept of animal welfare in slaughterhouses is basically a way for us to feel less guilty about eating more meat, and presents that argument. It's like, oh, we didn't care when we weren't eating as much meat. It's like now that we're like the population of the country is eating so much meat, it's like, well, we want to make sure that they had a nice life while they were alive before we killed them and ate them. And then another conundrum they had was like the argument between, is the number of lives worth more, or is it the type of life that's worth more? And talks about like, okay, I don't know what the actual ratio was for meals, but how many chickens would it take to feed as many people as one whale could? But it's like, we would never kill the whale, but we're okay killing all these like millions of chickens or thousands of chickens to make up the difference. Just like I said, all these moral conundrums. And I related a lot of this as I was reading to other things. As I'm listening to all this stuff, it's like, well, yeah, we think about this all the time we just kind of had a discussion like this with wild areas. Is it worth sacrificing some wild areas so that we can conserve the rest and have them for generations to come, or should we preserve it all and hope people care about it going on? And there is no definitive answer. And that's one of the things I really liked about this book is I'm sure 10 people could read it and we would all have different conclusions on what direction we should go.
I was going to say, because you could probably poll 20 people and get different answers of what they think is right and what is wrong. And it's a very sensitive topic.
Yeah.
I'm sure to many. There's many animal rights activists that I'm sure would look at this, or someone who's vegan and have one perspective, and someone have a different perspective. And we're not saying one's right and one are wrong.
Yeah.
You're just presenting what's in the book.
They has a whole other chapters on animal testing and how we're testing on so much on mice, whether it's cosmetics or medicines, all this stuff on mice because they share so much DNA with humans. And like, what number of mice is better than testing on actual humans? Like, we have every year there's people who are born that don't have a positive prognosis on how long they'll live. And is it worthwhile to test on those individuals? Because there's only going to be one person versus hundreds, if not thousands, of mice that they weren't going to live a long productive. Usually, it's like they're looking at weeks at best. Death row inmates. They're getting the electric chair soon anyway, or lethal injection anyway. Should we test on those people instead of mice? Is it the number of lives, or is it the quality? I don't want to say quality, but like whose life it is worth more? There's a lot of these moral conundrums. And then the last one was also in regards to animal testing, is you have a lot of like terroristic activity over some of these animal testing labs, whether it's with chimpanzees or other stuff, and where they're resorting to killing test subjects through bombings and all this stuff to kind of protest that it's happening, to all the way up to people where they're actually bombing people's vehicles and hoping the person gets in them when it happens, so that the testing on animals will stop. And it's like, well, what makes the test subjects' lives more valuable than the human life?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a very fascinating book. If you're anything like me, I'd recommend listening to it, even though it's not about plants, because while the arguments in the book aren't about plants and habitats and all that, you can take a lot of those arguments and easily start to move them into this native plant world, even with cultivars and versus species plants.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, which one's better? I think you're never going to have a definitive answer. Although I did get a message from Bill Stutznick with an article, and it was just too late for me to plug it in today, that has some PhD research that's being done on not cultivars, but where ecotype and how much that matters.
Okay. All right. It's an interesting, it sounds like something I would read. It can depend on your upbringing. Like, I can't imagine ever attending or taking part in a cockfight. Like, I can't. Like, to me, it's just like, ugh.
Yeah.
But culturally, for a lot of people, that's how they were raised or brought up. Not saying that it's right that they do it or not. Just saying it was, like, I can't see doing that. On my first date with my wife, like, she discussed growing up on a farm and knowing how to slaughter a pig. Mm-hmm. And it's like, and that was survival. Mm-hmm. It's just a different, not that I could ever see myself doing that, but I eat all the byproducts of pig.
Oh, yeah.
So it's, I don't know. There's so much to think about. Yeah. And I don't think there are answers.
Probably the what I should have included in this write-up, and it's something we've even talked about on here before, and I'm trying to find the right guest. Alyssa Lewis had asked me to have a guest on this topic. But the topic of vegetarian diets versus meat heavy diets, and which is better for the environment. And I think one of the things he points out is that you don't have a bloodless meal. It's just the type of blood that's spilled.
Yeah. And
is it same concept? Is it better that you had one cow lost its life to feed X many people versus and this is where I can use millions definitively, the millions of insects and small mammals and reptiles and all that are going to be in a farm field. And then even more so, what's going to be displaced, where agricultural systems can often interact with our native landscapes. There's a lot of water that goes into cattle, but a lot of that's natural rainfall that was going to fall on the ground anyway.
If you think
they can interact with a native ecosystem where soybeans don't, and corn does not. So
if you think about a huge field of lettuce, how many people that lettuce will feed? Yeah. But the impact that field has
versus
agriculturally.
What could have been there from a native ecosystem.
Like, what wildlife could it have supported? What insects, how many insects were killed?
Yeah, what was living in the ground, what's getting sprayed, what's all this kind of stuff. It's just like, it's not a bloodless meal. It's just what kind of blood are you spilling for each one. And now, I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole. I do want to have an episode on this because there is some really cool, especially in the regenerative ranching space, where they're using native plants and then working a lot of times with cattle, like conventional cattle and chickens and all kinds of stuff, and sheep and pigs and goats. But they're also, a lot of these places are integrating bison in as well. So now you have somewhat of a native megafauna that's interacting with a native landscape for meat production, which is, I saw one when I was in Kentucky a couple months ago, and it's really cool when you think about that. We're actually doing what was here 500 years ago in a more modern way, where it's a commercialized and capitalist enterprise. But I think we can all probably agree that our conventional meat system is probably not a sustainable route. But
the hard part is, and we talk about this all the time, with even just being a native plant nursery, how scalable, like when you talk about how land was managed 300 years ago, well, how many people were here compared to now? Like, are those practices scalable of what we dream about going back to? And it's, there's a lot more mouths to feed.
Oh yeah, yeah, and that's where talk about you talk about all these ethical conundrums. It's like, well, if we wanted to have the right amount of native spaces, there probably shouldn't be as many mouths to feed as there are. But that's I don't want to go there.
No, neither do I. Neither do I. Why don't we end it on that? We'll end it on that.
Yeah.
So for take it or leave it, I thought I would tie in a native plant every day. Because what do we? I think at this point we'll have 3 weeks left for the season. But if you listened last week into this week, there was a conversation about crickets that kind of happened over a 4 or 5 episode period. So I realized how little I knew about crickets, because you think about them being in your house and like, I don't want them in my house. So I started like, are these crickets even native? And so I did learn that most house crickets, what you would find in your house, are from Asia, but there are 20 native species of cricket to North America, and those crickets help break down dead leaves, other plant debris into gardener's gold or humus, the dark organic matter in soil that contains many nutrients and improves soil health. Cricket manure has an NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium analysis of 432. It makes for a fantastic organic fertilizer. So if you look at them in that respect, I'm wondering how many people see crickets in their house, get annoyed, or have gone through come on, cave crickets. I don't know if cave crickets are that's something that makes my, I don't know, like a phobia. It's like a phobia almost.
Huge fan of the cave crickets because they just look creepy. And I guess we're going back to the book. Why do we think cave crickets are creepy? But normal crickets are in movies.
yeah. I don't know. I don't know what that answer is. So, but I wanted to throw that out there, knowing that there's 20 native species. Are you pro cricket?
I think you have to be, especially native pro cricket. I guess I would liken it to the praying mantis argument. I am pro native mantis. I am anti foreign mantis. It's European mantis and Chinese mantis. I saw an egg mass in my garden at home of a Chinese mantis egg mass, and I smushed it.
There's an egg mass right on the garden, right out here, and I don't know.
I'm gonna go check it out.
I don't know native.
Is it round or is it like straight?
I think it's round.
Smushing it.
I think it's on the chokeberry.
Yeah,
alongside of the building.
I found a Carolina. I think it's a Carolina mantis egg mass in one of our greenhouses on a oak, I think.
Okay.
And not even like, it was an oak tubing, so really small.
Wow.
And it was just barely on there. And I did a whole video about it, but then I never posted it because I'm like, I don't know enough about these to. The European egg masses and the Carolina egg masses and some of the other native ones are very similar. The Chinese ones are very different. It looks like a little mini hornet's nest in a sense. It's round.
I think
and
that's what
like,
that is. Yeah,
it's kind of smushy. Where the Carolina ones from a picture, when you see them in person, they don't quite look like this, but they're not purely rectangular. They're like if you had a shoebox and you had something, you put a little bit too much tissue paper, and it's like, so it's rectangular, but it just kind of bowed out a little bit on the sides. But the bottom is still straight and the top is still straight. They just kind of curve a little bit on the sides, but they're pretty much rectangular, and then they have like a little ribbing in them. All right. Is the best way. But yeah, I know the Chinese mantises and the European mantises, they'll eat anything. It's like they'll eat hummingbirds, they'll eat all kinds of stuff, where the Carolina ones are a little bit more discriminate, I guess they're smaller too, from what I remember. But again, I'm no mantis expert. It's another one of those things. It's like you could go forever on this, and then it's like at some point you just want to throw your hands up and say, I wish I didn't know these things.
Yeah, I know.
I wish I just I knew that praying mantises were good, like I did when I was a kid.
Like, here's what I wonder, when you think of, like, at one point my children had a Chinese water dragon that got fed crickets. I don't know if I'm assuming those were probably Asian crickets, considering that it was a Chinese water dragon. So, and I believe, didn't you look up that's how like kind of the Asian cricket took off? Was it through?
I don't remember.
Through feeding?
Yeah, I might have said that.
Through food source. I can't remember, but it's. I wish I didn't know too, but it's interesting to know. I just assumed that crickets were not native. I didn't realize there were 20 native species in North America and what they provided. So I guess you have to be pro-native cricket.
Yeah. Oh, I'm definitely pro-native cricket. And then I know my sister-in-law was using a cricket protein powder.
Really?
So, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Have you ever eaten a cricket?
Oh yeah, I remember it.
Didn't your brother have chocolate-covered crickets? Or did he have crickets?
That.
He had crickets of some sort. I'm trying to think if I ate one. I don't think I did.
I remember at Rutgers, now it's Rutgers Day. They used to have Ag Field Day, and we would definitely try the child labor laws with my parents up there. My parents would go and sell a lot of like blueberry bushes and more fruit species as a way to give back. And then, but they had like I think it was Rutgers Entomology Lab, had a little tent, and it was like you could eat different insects there. And they had like little mealyworms and crickets, and yeah, I've tried them. And it's weird when you're not used to it, but it's like that's normal in a lot of places in the world. It's
it sounds like a Fear Factor episode.
It all relates back to the book. It's like it really does. My entire life, the last 3 weeks, have been relating back to this book, and I'm like, oh yeah, we don't like this, but why don't we like this?
Yeah.
Maybe we should like this, and maybe we shouldn't like this. it's
like what if all of a sudden it were to be exposed that butterflies tasted like candy?
Oh man,
like think about that. Like what if all of a sudden butterflies? Oh, it's all the nutrients you could need for a week if you ate like 2 butterflies.
And the monarchs tasted like sour orange. They're sour blood orange flavor. Oh,
like
man.
think about that conundrum. Like but they're so tasty.
Yeah,
like they'd be saved because they'd be raised as a delicacy.
That is one of the
there
things.
Would be huge monarch farms to make sure that
people would not. But would they be migrating like they would and all that? I don't know.
Oh, they'd have monarchs that could get 5 foot tall.
Yeah.
You know, they're the size
monarchs
of
that tasted like
condors.
Doritos. Oh my god!
But
who knew we were going to talk about this? Fran and I are not impaired while doing this podcast. This is just, this is what happens when you really start to dive into your brain and think about wacky things.
Why don't we end it on that?
Yeah, that's probably a good spot. Oh, let me pull up my script. I was looking up. What was I looking up? Oh, praying mantis egg masses. All right. Well, thank you for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed listening to The Buzz. Thank you, everyone, for listening to Native Plants, Healthy Planet, presented by Pinelands Nursery.
Thank you, RJ Comer, for our Buzz theme music. Make sure you stream or buy RJ's music wherever you consume your music. Check out his Americana playlists on Pandora. You'll appreciate them. Follow us on Twitter at Pineland Nursery, Facebook at Pinelands Nursery NJ, Instagram at Pinelands Nursery, and also YouTube at Pinelands Nursery. You can also check out our Instagram, Native Plants _Healthy Planet. Don't forget about the question and comment line. You can call us at 215-346-6189. I will repeat, 215-346-6189. Ask a question or leave a comment. We'll do our best to play it on a future episode of The Buzz. And the Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook group is growing and growing and growing. Just keep approving more members, and the conversations have been really good. And we appreciate all the feedback on a native plant every day too, and all the people that are telling us if they got the plant right and their conversations. I'm enjoying watching everyone else enjoy it.
Yeah, no, it is fun seeing how many people enjoy that media. That one, this is Native Plants Healthy Planet is, I don't want to say difficult to make. It is hard to find the time to do it, but it's fun that it kind of can be a reprieve from the day to come and do this. It's like when I'm putting all my stuff in the document that we use as our script, I'm like, man, when the heck am I going to have time to actually do this today? But when we do it, it's like kind of like
it's like, man,
takes
I'm
your
glad
mind
we're
off things, and has a different kind of conversation than we normally get to have.
And it's the same thing. Like Native Plant Every Day, the research to do each show is a lot. Like Christiane has spent a good portion of time putting those facts together for us. And I'm going to be sad when season 2 is over because I've really enjoyed season 2. Mm-hmm. I'm also going to be happy when we're done recording because we're so busy right now.
Yeah.
Doing both is really, really difficult.
Yep. So, that's what I was getting at is Native Plant Every Day is a lot of work and not for me. It's more for Christiane and you, Fran.
Yes.
But even the little bit that I'm involved with is still it's intense.
Just finding the time.
Yeah. So you can buy Native Plants Healthy Planet merch at www.nativeplantshealthyplanet.com. We got all kinds of stuff there. And no, Santino, I did not send my check or my check. Our check with my wife. I did not send my check with my wife to you. We have to do it in person. So tell us how jury duty went, and we'll see you soon.
He actually reached out today. I'll talk to you.
Good. So we take the dollars that we raise, the profits basically from those T-shirts, and we give them to organizations that we think are doing the right thing when it comes to native plants. I wish we could help everybody, but we can't. We can only do little small doses unless we get a big sale on T-shirts. And so do your part and help us help all these folks.
Exactly.
And then also you can listen to our podcast at that same website, but you're probably going to listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, really wherever you consume your podcast. Do us a favor. If you leave a 5-star review, that goes a long way into boosting us up the charts. And boosting up the charts means that more people are going to be exposed to us. I saw we were all the way up to like 150 on the Apple Science charts.
Yeah.
Which is
that's about the highest we've gotten, I think, on Apple Science.
Allie Ward, here we come. We're hot on your tails.
Yeah. We're on your heels.
And then if you hit subscribe, that goes a long way. So that's why I always advocate go take your friends' phones and hit subscribe on this. That also helps us boost those charts. And then you're just going to have more people that are going to be listening to this and learning about native plants. And then, too, you're going to have more friends that know what's going on in the native plant world that you can converse about these topics and say, hey, Tom's a real idiot for his take on pet dogs. And and you can commiserate on that. Yeah.
Remember when you first shared your feelings on cat and like you didn't know how it was going to – it was amazing how many people agreed.
I don't know I don't think we got anyone who disagreed. No. I think it's again, one of those things like, oh, I like cats, but I understand how bad they are.
But you didn't approach it that I just don't like cats and you should kill that. That wasn't – it was just like this is the issue that cats pose, and that's why I'm not a huge fan. Yeah. So, and then again, if you really do a little write-up with that 5-star review, not only does I think it help us more, but also gives us good feedback, which helps us make a better product. And then, too, you get a shout-out. So it's not like you're doing this for free. You get to feel good when the world hears about – here's your little pseudonym for your name, how confusing it is for me to say. So, so with that, do you have a secret, Fran? I don't. Did you share what your son said about the name?
I said the real name.
You did share that one?
But I didn't say, he kept saying to the kid Jack, he's like, what's your real name? We found out later because he did it to my wife and then he did it to me when I was pretending to be an astronaut. I had a little astronaut balloon at my friend's son's birthday. It was a space theme. And there was an astronaut balloon, and my son is talking to the astronaut, and he's like, "Oh, what's your name?" And I was like, "I'm Astronaut John." And then he's like, "What's your real name?" It's like, "I'm Astronaut John." Well, my wife clued me in. Yeah. When he said that, he means, "What's your full name?"
Gotcha.
Which I used John Glenn because Astronaut John was not going to be Glenn. He didn't believe me.
That's 2 first names.
Yeah. But no, that's what he was doing with my wife. I don't know if I told the kinetic sand story though.
No.
Did I tell you the kinetic sand story? Okay. Yes. Yeah, he by the way, many children.
Real quick, I have John Glenn's autograph.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Who knew?
Ran into him at a gas station.
Is this some kind of joke?
No, seriously.
How did you know it was John
I think
Glenn?
it's on a credit card slip.
Okay.
From the gas station back before you actually, like when they had to like run it through the thing. My dad was like, that's astronaut John Glenn.
Is John Glenn from around here?
No.
He's still alive, right? Is he the one who punched the guy who thought they faked the moon landing? I'm pretty sure he is. That could be our secret for everyone if it's true. John Glenn punches man.
He died in 2016.
Yeah. John Glenn punched a moon landing that night. Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
All right. But no, he was born in Ohio. But no, I have his autograph.
Yeah, interesting. Anyway, my son was watching TV, and there was an advertisement for kinetic sand, which I remember seeing that from when I was a kid. And he misunderstood that the word was kinetic and not kinesic. And he called my wife in really excited, and he's like, "It's kinesic sand. That's my sand. That's your sand. Kinesic sand." Which, that's pretty fun.
I love that.
Well, all right. Well, thank you, everyone. I'm Tom.
And I am Fran. Thank you again, everyone. Coming up next week, we have a fantastic episode. We've already recorded it about HOAs and lawns. And make sure you tune in for that one. Until then, keep it native.
Thank you for listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Remember to like, share, follow, and comment.